Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. This is Mike Cook, and you are listening to Positive Connections Radio, episode 56. Today's date is 5/22/2021. Just getting out of the whole corona darkness and into the light, which is awesome. I love this podcast. I love doing it. And today we have OCFA, Kelly Lucas, on to share his experience, strength, and hope so that you may realize that it's okay not to be okay. There's others just like you who have gone through similar extreme situations and struggles, and that there is help available. All you have to do is have the courage to stand up and ask. So Kelly shows tremendous courage being vulnerable and honest about his life, and he speaks up to show that it's a sign of strength to ask for help, not weakness. Why is it okay and valiant and good to be there for others when we are not willing to let others be there for us? If you know someone that's struggling and find it hard to confront them, think first and ask others. Many of us resist confrontation. Actually, it can make it worse. You know, if you point out that I have a problem, that I drink too much, that I'm destroying my life, do you think I'll agree and just say, "You're right, I give up, I need help, please show me the way"? No, I will fight, I will lie, I will dismiss and minimize. I might even drink the poison to kill my enemy. However, if I see you working on yourself and you talk about the struggles that you have and the struggles that you've overcome, then maybe, just maybe, I'll listen. Maybe I'll be willing to take some simple suggestions. And I was in group this morning, in a group of first responders talking about recovery, stigma, and asking for help. And the topic centered around the word we, or unity and connection. I realized that my disease, my illness, my injury, whatever you want to call it, it wants me to be far away from others. The opposite of addiction, what is the opposite of addiction? The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's not recovery. The opposite of addiction is connection. A friend described addiction and mental health issues as a destructive force. A destructive force similar to the destructive forces that we face, like storms, fires, earthquakes. A destructive force and an entity of its own. This force wants me to be alone and secluded. Secluded from the world. Secluded from my families, from my friends, from my children. It wants me to be alone with my own thoughts, fears, anger, my resentments, sadness, all of my pain, the shame and guilt, and of course, the big one, all of my secrets. And you know what the end goal is? The end goal is destruction. Destruction of me. It wants me dead. It doesn't care if it dies in the process. Addiction breeds in the dark. It likes to separate and trap me into thinking that I am not good enough. I'm a failure. I'm weak. It tells me in the dark that no one is there for me. That life is not fair. That I'll never be happy. However, it promises me freedom from all of this with just one drink, just one drug, one more moment to say, fuck it. What does it matter anyway? No one loves me. I have no friends. I hate myself. It tells me the world is full of evil and all the evil things that were done to me, all the evil things that I have witnessed, the things I have done. It weighs so heavily on me, and I keep them my secrets. A good saying that I heard early on in my recovery is that I'm as sick as my secrets. If I am as sick as my secrets, I can't even be honest with myself. If I'm not willing to share what I will never talk about because of shame, fear, stigma, ridicule, rejection, I seclude myself. And I'm sick. When I make the decision to stand up and leave that dark, small room and walk into the light and breathe the fresh air, my disease, my illness, my injury hates this. It cannot live in the light. When I open up and talk to others and share my story, what's really, really going on, when I become honest with myself, my disease starts to shrink. When I recover and continue to share about overcoming struggles and working an honest and active program of recovery, others may hear something they can use for themselves. We stand strong together. My story is not unique or extraordinary. In recovery, I find that we all share similar paths. The point is, it's how we deal with what is in front of us that matters. One thing I'll leave you with: never give up. That's the easy way out. It's your choice. Reach out. Trust that there's people out there that get you. They get first responders. They get what's going on. The pendulum has swung so far to one side now, it'll swing back again. And it'll be balanced for a little while. So just know that there is help available. You are not alone. And just reach out. Reach out to those people that are in your life that love you, that don't want you to die. They want you to help yourself, or at least desire to help yourself. So if you're sitting there alone, sad, confused, stand up and walk out into the light. And enjoy this podcast, the rest of your day, and hopefully have a great, great life. Talk to you soon. Hi, this is Mike Cook, and welcome to Positive Connections Radio. This show is intended to help break the stigma of mental health issues among first responders. I know from personal experience how PTSD, depression, and addiction can take over your life while suffering in silence. I was a police officer for 19 years and spent the last 10 years of my career as an undercover narcotics detective. I didn't reach out because of fear, lack of trust, shame, and stigma. It took me losing it all before I got help. With a new perspective and passion for life, I can now help others find a way out. Working together with peer support, wellness units, and the mental health and recovery field, we can bring about positive change for the ones who protect us all. The guests on this show offer unique and valuable information, support, and experience, and are the voice for those waiting to be heard. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Kelly. Everybody, this is Kelly Lucas from OCFA. He's a firefighter. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. Thanks, Mike. Good.
I'm so glad that you came on the show, and I know you in person, and I've heard your story. I think it's very beneficial for you to be on here to share your experience, strength, and hope in your recovery process. Why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and you know what happened, what was it like, and where are you at now?
Okay. I've been a firefighter for about 19 years now. I started off in Escondido for their fire department, and then moved to Orange County in 2004. I'd say at about the 13-year mark, I started realizing or admitting that a lot of this stuff was starting to catch up with me that I'd seen on calls or done. And I think I was in the old school thought of just it didn't matter, it doesn't bother me, the whole tough guy attitude.
Right.
And I think it started to catch up. I think a primary way I was dealing with it was through drinking more and more, and that's a popular pastime of firemen and cops, as as we both know.
And of course, we're and getting into it too. I mean, that's sort of like a rite of passage too, with first responder related fields, especially in the police and fire, where you get in there and you sort of bond over having a couple drinks and blowing off steam.
Yeah, and I think it started even earlier than that for me. In college, I went to school at UC San Diego, so local to both of us down here.
Yep.
And was in a fraternity, played on the rugby team, and both those, as great of experiences they were, they both had huge drinking cultures. I mean, that was just part of it. So I think the habit of binge drinking started early on for me in college, and then that was an easy transition to the fire service, because it was the same thing that the 801 club, as we called it when I first started, of getting off duty at 8 a.m. and then heading to the pub to have beers and breakfast.
At 8:01, you're right off shift, punch out, and you're punching right back in.
Yeah, not a good way to start the day as I look back.
No, and maybe in the beginning in your career, you're able to sort of like let loose, and that was so normal. But when did it start getting to be a problem? Because you suffered a lot of different scenes, like we all have gone through. The critical incidents that we're hired for a reason. We're hired that we're able to take a lot of trauma, and we're trained to take a lot of trauma. But what do we do with it after we have it? And we can't show it out in the field. And sometimes, we can't go back to the firehouse and sit around the table and have dinner and talk about our feelings. That doesn't seem to be much of the norm nowadays.
I think luckily it's getting to be more of the norm. I think we do have that advantage in the fire service of working on an engine or truck company where there's 4 of us, and depending on how close the crew is, talking about some of those things, and then watching out for each other, and then realizing that somebody's not acting normal, because that's one of the first signs, right? Is somebody's attitude or behavior on the crew completely changes, and we can start to cue in that, okay, something else is going on, and maybe it's work related, maybe it's home related,
right?
But, we've seen that, and we've been trained in that now, luckily too, for suicide prevention, to home in on some of those changes in the guys and gals that we work with.
So what's the general protocol when you do notice one of your partners, they're acting differently? They might be calling out, maybe not even coming to work in a different mood, or maybe their anger level has gone up, or they're very quiet. If you see some, symptoms that things aren't going well, what's the normal protocol that you guys do?
I think that's starting to change as we speak too, and with the advent of the peer support programs in police and fire departments, of queuing into those changes and having that person talk to a peer supporter, and hopefully that's a bridge to getting some professional help, either from a mental health clinician or getting them into a recovery program. And a lot of the peer supporters I work with, they've had so many informal conversations where sometimes they just need someone to talk to and get some stuff out of their backpack, so to speak.
Yeah. I like that analogy too, with the backpack. I mean, we go through our careers and we have the backpack, and we keep on putting the stones and boulders in there. That could be our critical incidents. That could be our, things that happen at home, whatever it is. And we just think we can carry it around the rest of our lives. And when they're able to at least set it down in an environment where they feel safe and confidential, talking to, like, peer support should, it'd be great if it could be very strong and able to welcome the guy or gal in there to sit down and maybe just talk. That might be the only thing that they're really looking for, is just someone to let off some steam. without pounding back a 12 pack or whatever it is, or doing some other activities that aren't very healthy for you. So having, positive coping skills, and also having an EAP or some kind of clinician or some kind of debriefing team that's associated with your department, where you can refer out and they can get some help away from the department. So a lot of us don't want the department to know that we're getting help, because it's perceived as a sign of weakness, at least within the person itself, usually, not the department.
Right. And I think going back to that backpack analogy, was at that 13-year mark for me. I didn't even realize I was carrying a backpack. And then all of a sudden it was overloaded with all these rocks or weights. And it's like, oh, I've been carrying this stupid thing with me my whole career. And now it's starting to get too heavy. And it's, the straps are starting to break.
Yeah.
And I can't sew it back together myself. And that's when I sought out therapy for the first time. And,
all right. So what happened? Was there any specific instant that happened, or was just like a moment of clarity that says, I need help?
So I have a little bit of a different story, because I didn't have to hit rock bottom. I think I caught my drinking before I hit rock bottom, but through dealing with that, I'd seen how much damage I'd done in relationships. And my story has to do with my mom. Is around that time, my mom had a fall while she was drinking, and she developed a drinking problem when I was in college to escape from some medical problems, to escape from pain and not sleeping. And she began to drink more and more, and I saw that change in her. And she had a series of falls, and I'd seen at my job people falling when they were drunk and having head injuries. And I'd sat down and talked with her and tried to give her the warnings. And then ultimately she had a fall where she fell down a flight of stairs and had a traumatic brain injury that she never recovered from. And my dad was her full-time caretaker for a year. She was a completely different person. She didn't have any short-term memory. You talk to her, and 5 minutes later, she forgot everything you were talking about. And she eventually went to a memory care facility, which was really hard on my father. But we got my father back. I mean, I've been close to him my whole life. My kids are close to him, so we got him back as a father and a grandfather. And that was huge, as hard as it was for him to make that move. So through going through that with my mom, I look back at it now, and she hit rock bottom, I think, as a sacrifice so that I didn't have to.
Okay.
And that really made me take a hard look at my drinking and the damage it was doing in my own life. And that's when I started seeing a therapist and dealing with my own crap that was all interwoven with it.
How was it? How was it going to? Was that basically your first therapy appointment to get help for yourself?
Yeah, and it was important for me to see a male therapist, and we can get in that too. I think he was very good at dealing with a lot of my personal problems, but I don't think he understood firefighters.
Okay.
And after a couple of years, I stopped seeing him, because I think he really wanted me to stop doing this job, and I wasn't ready to do that. I still enjoy this job. I still enjoy the people. I don't think it was that bad that I needed to stop doing it. And so I took about a year off from therapy, and then through going to the peer support conference and listening to some of the speakers there, I went, oh, man, I need to get back into it. And so now I see a therapist through the Counseling Team International, and who's female, and she's fantastic. So I've kind of seen both sides of it, of having a male and a female therapist, and having somebody that understands our job and somebody that doesn't.
That's so important. That is huge, because a lot of us in the first responder field will finally get the courage to seek therapy. And if we get someone that is a licensed therapist, they might be really, really great at what they do. However, if they're not culturally competent, if they've never dealt with fire personnel or police or dispatch or anybody in the first responder field, they might get secondary trauma from our stories and what we're dealing with. And that
I think I did that.
What's that?
I said, I think I did that to the first therapist through him doing EMDR with me.
And it was getting into some really, really big incidents. And you think you might have traumatized him a little bit?
Yeah, I think that came out a little bit later.
Well, and that's the case too. And also therapists have to realize that too, doing this job. If you are treating first responders, make sure that you know the culture you're dealing with. And if you're not able to deal with some of these really, really horrific incidences that we deal with and scenes, it's okay. Just maybe refer to somebody that can. There's a lot of good licensed clinicians out there that deal specifically with first responders, and the Counseling Team International definitely is one of them. They have qualified, well-trained clinicians, and they work closely with fire and police for sure. So, and I like to bring it back too about a lot of us go out and we finally say, okay, I'm going to go get a therapist. I'm going to go in the office. It's hard to do. I'm just going to sit in the office. What do you got to, you give me, what's this going to help? And if you get a bad taste in your mouth after the first one, like maybe you did, and you took a year break until you end up going back, a lot of us don't make it back. A lot of us have that stigma before we get into therapy saying, well, if you're weak, they don't understand us. If they weren't a first responder before, they have no idea what's going on with us now. How are they going to help me? And then our prophecy comes true and they can't deal with us, or maybe it's not a really good fit. And instead of maybe seeking out someone that is culturally competent working with first responders, we just stop and go, I could do this on my own. So I'm glad that did you see that Public Safety Peer Support Association? Is that the
conference in
San Diego
2 years ago?
Okay, definitely. So great organization also with the Counseling Team International. So you finally decided after seeing that and hearing some people speak that you needed some help, and you went to the counseling team and you got a really good therapist. And so did that help? Did you guys work with EMDR? And
she doesn't do EMDR. I had done EMDR with my previous therapist to process some incidents that I didn't even think were bothering me still. Of those, I've heard a therapist that's done some training for us from the counseling team of talking about it like ghosts. These ghosts that swim around in our head because our brain doesn't file these incidents away because they don't match anything else that we do in our normal lives. So we have problems filing that away in our brains. And I think that's a great analogy or picture of that ghost swimming around.
Mm-hmm.
And it manifests itself in some symptoms like drinking or drug use or sexual promiscuity, all sorts of things,
mm-hmm.
spending, these different addictions that we have as first responders. And I think that was the biggest piece for me, and the addictions that I've dealt with is when I first started looking at it, I thought it was just something I like to do. I thought it,
right.
I just like to drink, or I like pornography. That's my drug of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I just need to stop doing it. Well, once you start getting into it, it's way, way deeper than that.
Yeah.
We start looking at our relationships and how we were raised and how we were injured and the different trauma we may have endured before we even got into these jobs,
mm-hmm.
or maybe pushed us towards these jobs that we do.
Yeah, and if it wasn't fun or we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't do it to start with. So there is some benefits for it, but when it does start getting out of control, and using that as a coping mechanism, trying to balance out that ghost, that is floating around, and the file cabinet that it's all over the place. You can't really fit that into the one specific file. And there you go. Then you have some kind of a addiction, a habit that is probably not healthy for you. So you saw yourself in that position, and what happened then? How was your family life and your work life at that time?
Family life was stressed at the time because we were moving. We were buying a new house, moving from Vista to Carlsbad. So that's always a stressful
Sure.
move. I think I was getting ready to go through a promotional process soon after that. We have a special needs son who's adopted, our middle son, and he's a huge amount of work and a huge amount of stress on the family. So a lot of different pieces. And then the stuff that, that accident with my mom happened at that time. So there was a lot of going on, and it was a messy process. It wasn't like I went to therapy and just decided to stop drinking and I was all good. I mean, it was a couple year process of taking 6 months off of drinking and being pissed off at the world and pissed off at myself that I had to stop, and I couldn't control this, and I couldn't drink with the other firefighters, and couldn't go to social events. And you've probably heard being a dry drunk. It's like you're not drinking, but you're just an a-hole because I can't drink anymore. And then going back to it, going, okay, I think I can limit myself to a couple drinks, and trying to do that again, and then just
control drinking at that point.
Doesn't
you can try it. You can try it, but
doesn't work for me.
There you go. And a lot of us that do have issues with alcohol or drugs, just a little bit on the weekends, go ahead and try it. I know a lot of people have tried it, and I've tried it myself, and it usually doesn't work. And being a dry drunk too, I look at like the only thing in your life that you changed is you stopped drinking. The behavior's still the same. You're still an asshole. You still hold resentments. You don't have any other program. It's just your sheer will to stop. And you're pissed off because you can't drink like a normal person. You can't go out with your friends, and you feel like you're missing out on things. And I know without some kind of program of recovery, it doesn't make a difference really what it is something that you're reminding yourself that, hey, I'm in this program. I don't drink. I don't do those things that before. I'm working on myself to have a happier life and to live happier. So what kind of program did you get into? What did you find that works for you to take you to where you're at right now?
I think the first thing I want to say is you brought up that piece of all that crap still being in life, and all that pain is there, and then you don't have I didn't have my favorite escape mechanism.
Yeah.
And it's like, all this stuff in life and work and family, all these struggles are even more real, and I'm raw, I'm stripped because I don't have alcohol to sedate it. So it's a shitty process to go through, but I think of how much better I feel on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful. So my process was seeing a therapist regularly to deal with all my problems that I've been avoiding up until that point in my life. I'm an intellectual. I really enjoy reading. So I read 2 books that really helped me at the time. One's called, I think, The Naked Mind, and it's all about alcohol and how we have this subconscious drive to drink. It's the author, she writes about her experience of taking time off from drinking and seeing a lot of it's the social impacts and the social pressure to drink with friends and family.
Sure.
And then the other one was The Power of Habit, of how we have these habits where we have a cue or a trigger that triggers behavior, and then we get the reward. I know, I think on your previous podcast with Brock, he was talking about that, the cue behavior trigger, or
Yeah.
the trigger behavior reward, and changing that middle piece, that behavior, so you're not turning to drinking, you replace it with something else.
What do you do? So when you get triggered, you stop doing your behavior, you're seeing a therapist, you're working on some issues that you probably didn't want to let go of, take them out of this backpack. And how we shove everything down and we think we can have it in that container. But after a while of doing the same scenes and all those the crap that we deal with, it starts overflowing. So you're working a program, you're seeing a therapist, and you get triggered. Instead of going back to the unhealthy behavior, what do you fill that with?
So I had to find some new behaviors. So one thing that I did was, when I drank, I would usually wait till 5 o'clock in the evening, because that was that justification or that entitlement, like, oh, it's happy hour, and that's what would start the downfall for the night. So I started taking my dogs for a walk and listening to music at 5, and I'm like, I just need to get out, because if the household was stressful, or I'm tired from work, of doing that. I started paddleboarding for the first time, getting out on the ocean or the lagoon. Exercise, outdoor activities, a big one for me, of just getting out and removing myself from the stressful environment. So that those were some of the things.
I love how you talk. When you said happy hour, I always thought it was so weird, because that happy hour it reminds me of drinks, little mini tacos at a bar, you're having fun. But it was never an hour. My happy hour was like 6 or 7 hours until the bar closed. And then I couldn't even remember why it was so happy in the beginning, just the tradition of just going there and having those drinks. It's destruction hour for me. It's hell hour for me. I had to change my way I look at words and how they're selling it to me, because my drinking was never happy. I didn't say didn't have fun doing it, but it was fun until it wasn't fun anymore. And I still wanted to reach out for that fun time. So when I heard happy hour, I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll stay there for a little while and have some drinks. We'll have some really cheap food, and I'll figure out how I'm going to get home, because I know I'm going to drink too much. And so now when I think I just play the tape, I know that once I walk into that bar, it's I'm not going to leave until the lights turn on, usually, and something bad's going to happen. It always has.
I think that's a great point. Something I've written about is it's 2 hours of happiness for me, followed by 22 hours of misery, and
Right.
And that's one of my biggest drivers now. Is, I can enjoy myself for a couple hours drinking, but waking up those mornings and just being so down and depressed and foggy minded and short tempered with my kids because I'm hungover. I mean,
Sure.
That's one of my biggest reasons I don't drink anymore. And I thank God the mornings I wake up, or if I'm driving to work, I'm like, I feel so good. Things are so clear. The world is so bright. And I didn't feel that way when I was drinking. What a depressive, toxic substance.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And until we find out what sobriety looks like, and waking up with a clear head, and working on those resentments, and working on those issues of, woulda, coulda, shouldas, and not being able to drink, and looking at it as a positive instead of a negative, that you choose now, not to do the things that you were doing before. And bringing you up to this point, what's your life like now, with work, with family, with your sobriety, with your self-care, and your future? What do you see about all that?
I think it's constantly evolving, and it doesn't just change overnight. Like I was saying, it doesn't go from darkness to light immediately. I've done a ton of work in my relationship with my wife, and I think that's a good point to bring up too. I think in talking to this with other firefighters that have gone through a recovery process, is you start looking at these things with yourself, and you look at the damage you've done with your spouse or your girlfriend or husband or boyfriend, whoever, and then you start to get up to this higher level. You're like, oh, I've done all this work, I'm feeling better, I'm kicking ass. And then your spouse or significant other is still, they don't know who you've become.
Right.
And then there's this, because I know I did this, I started pressuring my wife, like, oh, you've got to see a therapist. It's the best thing in the world. And she's like, I don't want to see a therapist. That sounds horrible.
Right? Exactly.
And
you need a therapist, man.
Yeah. And what a terrible way to tell that to someone too. Like, you need help. It's like, well,
yeah,
thanks a lot. And it wasn't till she was willing to do the work on her own and work on her own stuff that we were able to connect again. And that can be the undoing of some relationships. I mean, I know I've talked to my therapist of people that have gotten sober from whatever their drug of choice was, and it caused their relationship to fall apart because maybe that relationship was somewhat functioning with drugs and alcohol present.
And that's a great point. I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is very important. We go out and we get help for ourselves, and our family might be resentful from the past. They might have like, hey, yeah, you do need a problem. I've been telling you for years, you need to stop drinking. You need to go see a therapist. You need to do something. You need to get in some kind of group that you could talk about things, because you're definitely not talking about it with me. You're coming home drunk. You're waking up or coming to when you decide to do so, whatever the deal is. So we go out and get help, and we find recovery, whatever it looks like, mental health, alcohol, whatever it is. And we start changing. We work some program, whether it's a set program like Smart Recovery or 12-step recovery or Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, whatever that is, or maybe we've just changed our behavior. We started working on ourselves. We start doing, talking to people like you're doing about their recovery path, and being open for others to contact you and maybe learn from what you said or take some of your suggestions or ideas before it's too late, before you hit whatever bottom you hit. You said earlier about your rock bottom. I look at it as everybody has their own bottom. I hope it's rock, and I hope that you can put down the shovel and stop digging. That's where you stop. If you find out before you lose your family, before you lose your career, before you lose your friends, before you go to prison, before you run over someone drunk, that's great. That's perfect, because you do not want to be forced into it. Like, well, now I guess I'm going to do it now. I should have took the suggestions earlier. But going down to we're getting recovery. We're getting help. We're feeling better. We're waking up stronger. We're waking up in a better mood. Maybe we brought back, some kind of spirituality to our program. Like we're grateful to be alive. We're more present in our family. However, our spouses or the people we live with or our family, just like you said, we're down here, and then we sort of get to our level of our spouse, and we're okay, everything's happy, and then we start progressing in our recovery. We might be doing meditation. We might be walking the dog. We might be exercising more, doing these kind of activities, going to bed, taking the supplements, whatever it is, and talking to a therapist, or maybe being in some kind of group, talking to others that understand us. And if our partners aren't willing to look at themselves, then the chances are we were going to, overlap where they were before, and we might not be able to relate on the same page anymore, or even get back to the page that we might have been when we first met them. So it's a lot easier. We tend, and in recovery, to say, okay, well, this worked for me. You need to have some help, and it depends on the how we talk to them about it, how we present it to them. If we make it more of like a suggestion, or maybe just how we're doing it, we're showing, leading by example instead of leading by pointing and saying, okay, well, I'm working on myself. You need to work on yourself so we can be on the same page and you understand what I'm talking about. So hopefully we can have that conversation. Possibly if we're in a group or we're seeing a therapist, we can bounce that off them or other peers that get us and find the best way to talk to our spouses, because a family, we have to be a family. We're a family in the fire department. We're a family at home. We need to work together. This can't be done alone, and it works better as a family. And things do get better once they realize, like, maybe I should look at myself a little bit too and work on myself and work your own programs, but work it together as a family. So it looks like that's what you guys are doing.
I agree, Mike, and I think, and I got to hand it to my wife. She's done so much work on herself and us, and she's gone through some really hard things, and all this stuff just came out in the last year or so in her working and doing EMDR, and she didn't even know that stuff was there. I suspected that there was some trauma there, but I didn't think it was anything like that. And I have this kind of working theory because of my personal experiences. I think us as cops and firefighters, like we're rescuers, and I've talked to this with my therapist, is we have a rescue complex, and I think I was drawn to her without even knowing any of that stuff in her past, and right. I think other people in our professions will or have had a similar experience, and I will say, as hard of it as it was for both of us to deal with this stuff and deal with our own stuff and deal with each other and not emotionally connecting. I mean, we are far more connected after 19 years of marriage than we ever have been, because we finally dealt with all this crap that we were carrying, and some of it we didn't even know about until we started getting therapy.
That's great.
And it's like now we can meet each other and be best friends like we're supposed to in a marriage and support one another, because we finally face these deep down dark secrets and fears and the stuff that people don't want to talk about. And now not only can we talk about it with our therapists, we can talk about it with each other and finally really connect on a soul level.
Definitely. It's scary. It's fearful. And being, rescuers, we don't want to say that we can't handle something. We're supposed to be helping everybody else. And how can we possibly be so selfish to look at ourselves and work on ourselves and show some kind of vulnerability that, it's not a weakness. It's a strength. When I talk to guys, I know more firefighters and police in recovery than I did when I was a cop. I know a lot of guys and girls in recovery that are first responders. They are getting help, and they're finally, releasing some of this negative energy that they've been storing up for so many years, based on the fact that we're out there to save your lives. Dispatcher, I just interviewed Cassie, and they're overlooked a lot of times. They're sending us their calls, but they're getting traumatized too. Sure. And once the scene's secure and we go back to where we're doing, we might go to another call. But if something's really bugging you over that day or night, it really, really helps. I strongly suggest to let it out, talk about it, and then hopefully that might be it. My trauma that I suffer might not even affect you, Kelly. You might hear about my story like, well, I've had 10 of those situations and it never bothered me, but that one situation that you had that has really wrecked you for that period of time, or it's always stayed with you, that might not have affected me. So we can't put each other in the same box, but we all understand the box that we're in, and we're able to talk about it. So I think it's really beneficial once all this stuff's on a table in a relationship, that we can start sifting through things and understanding and being non-judgmental and love each other a little bit more so we can go back to work and finish off our careers and have a great life. And it's possible. It really is. And you're a living example of it right now. And thank you so much for talking and being so vulnerable on the program, because that's what it's all about.
Well, thanks, Mike. I agree with what you said, and we have to be more vulnerable with one another at work, with our families, with our kids, of showing that emotion and talking about it. And you talked about how we have different experiences, and I know you've talked with the doctor from Simple Recovery of micro traumas, and I really
Dr.
think
Odom, yes. Yeah.
I think that's really a big factor. I mean, there's so many little stressors in our work of bad leadership and working too much, and sleep deprivation is a big one. All these little things, and they stack up and start building up that heaviness in the backpack, and then wham,
Sure.
you get hit by a macro trauma or something.
Mm-hmm.
That if there were just a few micro traumas, it probably could have been processed okay.
Yeah.
But I know when I'm working too much or feeling maxed or not getting enough sleep, then
Yeah.
those little things or those medium things or those large things become really, really hard to handle.
Such a great point. And we put all this stuff in a backpack. We shove it all down. We don't deal with it. We think we can be strong enough. And then we break a shoelace and a freaking world comes tumbling down, right? It's not about the shoelace. That was just the twig, that just, it wasn't about that, but we finally just like let go. And then hopefully we don't get too self-destructive where we lose it all and we end up leaving our careers or getting fired or God forbid killing ourselves. And that's horrible. It really is. And a lot of us do think that is the only way out. That's the easy way out, but it's a permanent solution to a short-term problem. And if we look at it that way, we get through these periods of time. We get through these periods of time and we get to talk about them like we're talking about it right now. And I know that there's people listening to this show that are suffering right now. They really are suffering. And hearing your voice might be the catalyst and push them over where they're able to say, okay, Kelly, still a firefighter. He's worked on his problems. He got through these issues. He gets us. He's back to work and things are a lot better. What would you tell someone listening right now that, just wants some words of encouragement that maybe, they can actually get help, and without telling everybody that they're getting help? A lot of times the stigma is, you don't want your partners to know. However, what would you say to someone listening right now?
I think that no matter who it is, that they've got people that care for them, their coworkers, their family, and their friends that value them and love them and want to see them thrive. And I understand that isolation and how drugs or alcohol or pornography can make that isolation worse, of filling myself with shame and not wanting anybody to know my secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And that vulnerability is a way to release it. But also when you go to therapy, it's confidential. The other people don't have to know if you don't want them to. And that there's several ways out. I mean, there's been times when I've been at the bottom of my addictions, like this is it. I'm screwed. I'm never going to get any better.
Yeah.
This anchor is shackled to my ankle for life.
Hopelessness,
and that shame of not wanting to let other people know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in our professions, Mike, where where that ego is so important, and not showing weakness and being strong, because we do have to be strong and have our stuff together when we go on calls to handle them. but there's that other side that we need to come back down and come off of that and be loving people for our friends and family. It's been a huge driver for me, so that I've gone back to school so that I can be a therapist for
Nice.
police officers and firefighters, because I have such a passion for these people. I mean, I think we're all a little bit off, right? To do these jobs, we get asked to do things that nobody else wants to do. That's been a big piece of recovery for me too, is of being passionate about something that's related to the fire service, but it's not the sole purpose of my job. And having that different focus in my profession has been a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at people differently going through this program. I look at people that are having problems, or the guy that's just a jerk to everybody at work. It's like,
right.
that guy wasn't born a jerk. And I know I've been that person too.
Yeah.
What's gone on for him inside and outside of work that's making him act that way?
Something's going on. If you're noticing the signs, where it's so easy for us to get in our little clicks and say, okay, well, so-and-so, he's having some issues. He's a jerk. He's doing this and that. Instead of just like having some little bit of empathy and compassion and saying, I'm going to go talk to him. I'm not going to pressure him, but hey, you want to talk about something? And they might push you off. I pushed a lot of people off in my life, and I lied and said, no, I'm great. Everything's fine. However, I was burning up inside. I was, destroyed. And so, work in your own program like you're doing, be able to identify certain things and have a little bit more empathy and compassion, because, you want your partners out there to be 100%, and you want to be as close to 100% as possible. We're always going to have our ups and downs and good days and really great days, but just to do that and to offer some help is super, super important in our field.
I think that's a huge piece of the peer support programs too. Even if they don't want to talk to you, of showing that continued concern and care for someone. I've listened to podcasts of people that have survived suicide attempts, or people that have jumped off bridges, and
right.
They were on their way to do the deed, so to speak, and they were just hoping someone would notice them.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that they just felt so alone and isolated that nobody noticed them. So I would say that to our brothers and our sisters too, is take that time to notice someone, or notice that change in someone, and reach out. And even if they don't accept it, you're showing care and concern about who they are and what's going on for them.
That's great, Kelly. Thank you so much for being on the show. Great way to end it. Be that light for somebody else, and you're doing that. So thank you so much. It's been an honor having you on, and we'll definitely keep in touch moving forward.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it.
And everybody listening, Kelly, is there a way that if someone wants to get a hold of you or talk to you, reach out, share their experience, strength, or hope, is there a way to get a hold of you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. You can reach me by email. It's a gimmicky email. It's old, but you can reach me at ocbombero@gmail.com.
OC Bombero?
Yeah.
What's that?
Orange County firefighter.
That's a bombero?
Bombero is Spanish for firefighter.
Oh.
So
man, I'm so glad I asked that. Orange County Bombero.
Like I said, it's a little gimmicky, but it'll work.
I like it. I'm gonna name the podcast OC Bombero. Kelly Lucas. All right, my man. I will talk to you soon. Everybody listening, thank you so much for listening to this podcast with Kelly, and I wish you the best week possible, the best rest of this day, and remember to be nice to one another. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, man. Thank you for listening to Positive Connections Radio, in affiliation with Mental Health News Radio. Have a great rest of your day, and until next time, be strong, stand up, speak your truth, and break the stigma.